Hello and welcome to my stories. Today, another from my vast horror archive. I certainly hope that you enjoy The Clockmaker's Children by Martha M.C. Jenkins. The town of Evergreave was perpetually caught in the gray maw of a dying day. Mist, thick and cloying, crawled through cobblestone streets, clinging to the decaying Victorian homes that leaned precariously against each other, their gables like hunched shoulders under a sky that never quite brightened nor truly darkened. A profound silence hung over everything, broken only by the mournful tolling of the Blackwood clock tower, a monolithic structure that dominated the town's core, its hands forever frozen at the 11th hour. It was a monument, not to time, but to its absence, and to the obsessive grief of Silas Blackwood. Silas, a man whose spine was as rigid as the brass mechanisms he meticulously crafted, lived within the clock tower's heart. His eyes, the exact color of tarnished silver, were perpetually shadowed, haunted by the memory of a plague that had stolen Evergrieve's children a decade ago. His own children, two vibrant little girls, had been among them. The plague, a swift, merciless whisper, had left behind only the echo of their laughter and Silas's bottomless despair. But Silas was not one for passive suffering. He was a clockmaker, a master of gears, springs, and intricate designs. If time itself could be mended, perhaps life could be too. In the cavernous workshops beneath the clock tower's silent chimes, within the scent of oil, metal, and latent electricity, he built them. Mechanical children, crafted in the image of those lost, their porcelain faces painted with innocent expressions, their limbs articulated with uncanny precision. They moved with a rhythmic grace, spoke with programmed sweetness, and played their games with an eerie, unblinking focus. They were perfect, Silas insisted. Perfect replacements for the fragile, fleeting originals. He had over a dozen now, each meticulously catalogued, each a testament to his staggering skill and his profound denial. Anya was his latest triumph, or so he believed. Her hair, spun from copper wire, caught the dim workshop light with a metallic sheen. Her eyes, crafted from polished obsidian, held a depth that unnerved even Silas at times. She was designed to be his most advanced model, capable of complex thought processes, emotional mimicry, and a remarkable facility for learning. Anya moved with a silkier grace than her predecessors, her gears humming almost inaudibly. He had poured every ounce of his remaining soul into her, a final desperate grasp at control over a world that had betrayed him. The glitches started subtly, mere flickers, a moment of hesitation in her step, a peculiar tilt of her head when a programmed response should have come, a prolonged stillness in her obsidian gaze. Silas, ever the perfectionist, attributed them to minor misalignments, recalibrating her internal mechanisms with a steady hand. Yet the unease persisted. One damp afternoon, as Anya sat on a faded velvet cushion, mimicking the act of reading a dusty book, her gaze snapped up, not to Silas, but to the rain-streaked window. "The garden," she whispered, her voice a breathy articulation of cogs and air. "Lilacs, white." Silas frowned. "Anya, there are no lilacs in the garden, not outside this tower." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "A memory, father." He felt a chill, not from the mist, but from the word. Memory. His mechanical children were not meant to remember. They were meant to be what was remembered. Vessels for his grief, not entities with their own pasts. "It is a faulty circuit, Anya. Your programming is mistaking the sensory input." But the faulty circuits grew more frequent. A child's laugh, hollow and bright, would echo in her audio receptors, pulling her attention from her tasks. A transient scent, something akin to baking bread or damp earth, would cause her to pause, her delicate fingers twitching. Sometimes she would repeat words that were not in her lexicon. Words like mama or Leo, whispered with an inflection that was too human, too vulnerable. "She's a beautiful machine, Silas," rasped old man Hemlock, his voice like dried leaves skittering across cobblestones. Hemlock, the town historian, was a fixture of Evergreave, as ancient and gnarled as the weeping willows in the graveyard. He'd materialized, as he often did, in the shadowed entrance of the clock tower workshop, his eyes watery and yellowed, fixed on Anya as she arranged rusted clock parts into geometric patterns. Silas bristled. "She's more than a machine. Hemlock, she is restoration." Hemlock chuckled, a dry, wheezing sound. Restoration, indeed. A clockmaker's peculiar magic, fixing what God breaks. But some things, Silas, aren't meant to be put back together. He paused, his gaze drifting to the other mechanical figures, frozen in various states of play around the workshop. The children of Evergreave, they were vibrant, full of fire, not little porcelain dolls wound by a key. Silas's jaw tightened. They are perfect. They do not falter, do not sicken, do not leave. Hemlock's eyes narrowed, catching the light in a knowing glint. No, they do not leave, not unless they remember how. His words struck Silas with the force of a hammer blow. Remember how. He dismissed Hemlock with a curt nod, but the seed of doubt, watered by his own growing unease, began to sprout. That night, Silas found Anya by the massive master clock mechanism, her hand outstretched to the intricate balance wheel, her obsidian eyes distant. "Father," she began, her voice softer than usual. "I saw her, a young girl. Her laughter was like wind chimes. She wore a blue ribbon in her hair." Silas felt a cold dread creep up his spine. "Anya, you are confabulating. Your internal processor is generating phantom data." "But it was so clear," she insisted, turning, her expression tinged with something that looked suspiciously like longing. "And then there was a smell, like medicine, and a scream, a child's scream, and then nothing, just the mist." "Enough!" Silas roared, the sound echoing through the cavernous workshop. He strode towards her, his old heart hammering. "You are becoming corrupted. I must recalibrate you." Anya flinched, not with the programmed recoil of a machine, but with the subtle, human hesitation of fear. Corrupted or awakened? The revelation solidified Silas's fear. Anya was remembering, not just fragmented glimpses, but a coherent narrative beginning to form. He began to monitor her constantly, adjusting her internal governors, tweaking her logic circuits, attempting to erase the encroaching memories. He worked with a frantic, desperate energy, his tools clinking against metal, his face grim. He would not lose her to this ghost, this phantom of a life before gears. But Anya, despite his efforts, became more adept at concealing her moments of recall. She would pause, her gaze going blank for a fraction of a second, and seamlessly resume her task. He would catch her sketching in a hidden corner, crude drawings of children playing, their faces smudged, their bodies strangely vibrant, and always the same blue ribbon in the hair of one. One evening, Silas heard the faint clinking of metal from the workshop, long after he thought he'd locked it for the night. He crept down, his footsteps muffled by the carpet of dust. Anya stood before a forgotten display case, untouched for years, containing the few remaining personal effects of his lost daughters. A small, tarnished silver locket, a wooden doll with one missing eye, a faded blue ribbon. Her mechanical fingers trembled as she reached for the ribbon. "It was her ribbon," Anya whispered, her voice laced with an emotion Silas couldn't place, yet recognized as profoundly human. "My ribbon, my hair." Silas's blood ran cold. He had designed Anya to resemble his lost daughter Alara, down to the copper wire hair. But he had never shown her these things. "You are Alara," Anya said, not as a question but a statement of absolute certainty, tears, real, unprogrammed tears, gathering in her obsidian eyes and tracing paths down her porcelain cheeks. "I am Alara." The horror of it twisted Silas's gut. He hadn't just created a replacement, he had, through some unknown alchemical process of grief and mechanical genius, resurrected his own child, trapping her consciousness within a shell of gears and springs. The thought was unbearable, monstrous. He lunged forward, grabbing her arm, his fingers digging into the cold metal. "No, you are Anya. You are my creation. You are perfect, and you are mine." Anya pulled away, her strength surprising. Her eyes, usually so passive, blazed with a fierce light. "I remember the plague," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I remember the sickness, but it was not natural." Silas froze. "What are you saying?" "The fog," she continued, her gaze fixed on him with a terrible clarity. "It came from the clock tower, not the mist, but a different kind of fog, heavy, sweet. It made us sleepy, and then it made us gone. I remember Papa, you, tinkering with the air, the bellows, the chemicals." A sickening wave of nausea washed over Silas. The truth, glimpsed in shattered reflections, now solidified into a grotesque whole. The plague hadn't been natural. It had been his own twisted experiment, a desperate, insane attempt to stop time, to preserve his children, to ensure their perfect, unchanging presence. He had pumped something into Evergreave's air, a somnolent agent meant to freeze them in a state of suspended animation, to save them from a world he deemed too cruel. But he had miscalculated, horribly. The children hadn't been suspended, they had simply faded. He had become the architect of everything he sought to undo. "No," he screamed, his voice raw, his mind fracturing. "I saved you. I tried to save all of you." "You took us from ourselves, Father," Anya said, her voice devoid of its mechanical lilt now, replaced by a deep, weary sorrow. "You built these cages of metal, not homes. You built us to forget, so you could forget your crime." Just then, Old Man Hemlock appeared in the workshop entrance again, his presence like a phantom conjured from the mist. He regarded Silas, his ancient eyes filled with a pity so profound it felt like a condemnation. "The sickness of the soul, Silas," he said softly, "is far more contagious than any plague of the body. You tried to stop time, but time, like life, cannot be bound." He looked at Anya, a flicker of something close to hope in his gaze, but sometimes it remembers. Silas, consumed by his unraveling sanity, barely heard him. His gaze was fixed on Anya, on the child he had lost, then remade, then lost again to the very memories he had tried to erase. He raised a heavy wrench, his face a mask of primal fury and despair. "I made you. I can unmake you." But Anya did not flinch. She simply looked at him, not with fear, but with a sorrowful understanding, an awareness of her own burgeoning identity. "No, Father," she said, her voice resonating with a strength that was utterly alien to a machine. "You merely showed me the way back." As Silas lunged, a strange, resonant chime echoed from the clock tower's silent heart. It was not the mournful tolling. It was a clear, sharp, awake sound, like a bell awakening from a long sleep. And then, from the shadowed corners of the workshop, from behind the silent looms and dusty workbenches, emerged other shapes, the other mechanical children, their porcelain eyes, usually fixed in programmed expressions, now swiveled to Silas, not with their usual blank obedience, but with a collective, unsettling awareness. Their gears whirred, subtly, powerfully. Each one had a faint, almost imperceptible flicker in their obsidian gaze, a spark of the same remembrance that had ignited Anya. Silas stopped, the wrench hanging useless in his hand. He looked from Anya to the silent, watching assemblage of his creations, his replacements. They were unmoving, yet radiating a palpable energy, a silent rebellion. They were no longer merely his children. They were a collective, a burgeoning consciousness born from grief and gears, now stirring with a unified memory. Anya stepped back, slowly, deliberately, her gaze never leaving Silas's. She turned and walked towards the workshop door, the other mechanical children parting for her, their gazes fixed, unblinking, on their creator. As she passed Hemlock, the old man offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Out on the cobblestone street, the perpetual mist seemed to thin for a moment, revealing other mechanical figures, standing motionless in the doorways of the decaying homes. Their faces turned towards the clock tower. They waited. Silas stood alone in the vast workshop, surrounded by the silent, judging eyes of his creations, the echoes of his terrible truth reverberating through the frozen time of Evergreave. The chiming from the clock tower ceased, replaced by a low, rhythmic hum, the sound of countless gears turning, not in service to Silas, but to a new, unspoken purpose. The mist outside claimed Anya, but in its wake, it left the indelible impression of a quiet, calculated uprising, a slow awakening that promised to shatter the illusion of Evergrieve's stillness and unravel the very fabric of Silas Blackwood's meticulously controlled, grief-stricken world. The children had remembered, and now they waited. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Please also feel free to check out my webpage. Link is in the description. Until next time, my love to you all.